Hello, my name's Cliff Freilich. I'm the Executive Director of Cinema St. Louis, and we are the presenters of the 29th Annual Whitaker St. Louis International Film Festival. We're really pleased to be joined by the co-directors of River City Drumbeat, Anne Flatté and Marlon Johnson, and they're going to be interviewed. The Q&A will be handled by Andy Uhrich, who is the new head of the Film and Media Archive at Washington University Libraries. This film is being presented as part of the Henry Hampton film series, the Henry Hampton collection, the archive of the great documentary filmmaker Henry Hampton, who grew up in St. Louis, went to Washington U. It resides at Washington University. And we annually do a presentation during the festival, and then there are several other films that oftentimes appear throughout the course of the year. So we're really pleased to have River City Drumbeat as part of that. All right, I'm going to turn things over now to Andy.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you all. Anne, Marlon, thanks for being a part of this. I wish we had just heard, yeah, please say hi. I wish we just heard the clap of an audience. That's what's sort of missing from this. It's really great to be with you. Yeah, everyone clap. Everyone that's watching this later.
Send us a mental clap.
Yes. Yeah, it's great to be talking to you all about your film, and also I think to be celebrating the spirit of Henry Hampton and his production company Blackside, and also to sort of include your film in the lineage of that style of documentary filmmaking. So thanks for being with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. I wish we were in person, like I said, but I want to thank Cinema St. Louis and Cliff and his team and the St. Louis International Film Festival for keeping these screenings and discussions going. I think it's really important right now to think about how we keep communities of all types together, organizations of all types going through this moment of pandemic and political I don't even want to say beyond that word political. I'll just leave it at that for now. But I want to use that as a transition to what I think is one of the movie's themes from watching it now multiple times, which is how people create and why they create and maintain organizations. In the movie, you follow the River City Drum Corps, right, which was created to sort of fill in this lack of support for children due to the systemic anti-Black racism that sort of took away things that should have been there for them, so people had to create it themselves. So I wonder if you could talk about making this movie about the River City Drum Corps, and how you settled on that organization and the people in it, and also how you, was it luck that it was at this moment of transformation for the organization, which we see? That's the first.
I love how you dive right into it and you get right to the issues. You don't shy from it. Let's go. No. So both Anne and I have been working on documentaries for many years, mainly about the arts, mainly about music and social justice. Anne had a project that she was doing in Miami. I'm from Miami, and someone recommended me to help produce it locally. Wonderfully, we hit it off and always thought we should work on a project together in the future. Like so many endeavors, you don't know where that's going to lead you, but her producing partner Owsley Brown is from Louisville, and knew about the organization and always had an inkling to want to do something with them, wasn't sure what. And so Mr. White, the co-founder of the organization, was retiring, and that was what really hit off and sparked this movement to do a film about the organization, about him leaving and sending the organization into the hands of Albert Shoemake, whose own life was saved by the program. So I was invited out to Louisville along with Anne, and just to come out and really just observe and just listen and just be immersed in this wonderful community that felt so much like one of my own background. And so came out for a week and just knew right away that it was something that was special, this sense of community, this sense of the importance of the arts and music, all were things that resonated in my life. And I found myself with so many cross sections between Mr. White and Albert, and and Anne and I after that, decided that this was something that really needed our full attention for a very long time as storytellers. And is that kind of...
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it's hard to summarize it all, and you
Mhm.
did a fantastic job. I mean, you know, this is a multi-year project. It had been thought about for a very long time. We, as Marlon said, have each done films about the importance of the arts and music to human beings, and like, why do human beings do this, you know,
Yeah.
and how to make meaning out of why we're all here. And we found that music is such a powerful force in the world, and music and movies together is just like kind of the, you know, our sweet spot.
Mhm.
So then to add to that, you know, Marlon and I are both parents of, you know, kids. And so it's like just understanding how difficult it is to raise children in America in general. It is not easy. And then to meet this community that was of caring adults that was doing absolutely the best for the kids that they were in their community, you know, in the face of these incredible, you know, challenges and systemic injustices that have been perpetuated for generations, was frankly very inspiring, and something that, you know, everybody in the drum corps was like, yeah, this really needs to be told. People need to hear about this. Like, this is what we're doing with, you know, every day we wake up and do this, you know. And you don't see it on the news. You don't see this portrayed, you know, just, you know, so, and that's what Mr. White has been saying for 30 years, you know, and then he's leaving, like, you know, like, so it's like, if you're going to make this movie, you got to make it like now, you know, because it's just, and then, you know, personally, I've, you know, working in the nonprofit world and kind of the non-commercial world, I understand how fragile these organizations are. And when you see an organization that is doing such good for so many people, and especially young people, you know, and you see, you know, the fact that it's so fragile and it might go away if the transition isn't handled a certain way. I was just very curious to see how that would happen and if the drum corps would survive. We didn't know whether it would when we started the movie, and we felt like that question of legacy, you know, how do you build a legacy? How do you continue it after? How do you step away, you know, if you're Mr. White? Those are all really interesting questions.
Yeah, and it really comes out in the movie, I think, through your sort of sensitivity, and you're working with them over that time period. And I you know, I obviously don't know Mr. White, but he has to get a lot of credit for learning not to sort of fall into the trap of the founder syndrome, for, like you said, for a lot of the organizations that get started. So it was fascinating to see just that transference of that. You see why it's important to keep the drum corps going, the what it fulfills for the community, and then also sort of the challenges that it took to find someone that would take it over for him, right? That seems like that required a lot of sacrifice on Mr. Shoemake's part as well, right, on Albert's part.
Yes.
So I think just from that sort of the service they provide, they I think deserve a lot of commendations. You talked about the power of the arts, and that's something that Mr. White talks a lot about in the movie, right?
Sure.
And throughout the movie, you see music, you see dance, you singing, sculpture. My question for you is where you think documentary film fits into that, both in terms of its role, I think, in sort of documenting, again, this organization, and then I think wider.
Both Ann and I have our background in the arts and in music, me in theater, and that vehicle really, for me, opened up a whole other world. It, you know, I grew up in a world that really mostly told me no. And when I was exposed to the arts, it really, it showed me that there was this other universe that I could be a part of, and a whole other set of individuals who thought like me, which was always a little bit different, and, you know, wasn't in the sports per se. And so it was this vehicle that allowed me to imagine beyond beyond what I thought I could and open up a world. And so I think that's kind of what documentary films can do, is it can invite you into worlds that you might not otherwise have had experience in, and have this deep sense of being immersed and a sense of empathy that that is a very powerful tool. And so we as storytellers are just part of a long legacy of artists and of storytellers who transform you into a different place, space, experience, time. And that's what we're tasked to do. I hope that is that too convoluted? Does that make sense? Yeah. And
makes perfect sense to me. I mean,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's been wonderful to work with Marlon on this film, because we both approached documentary as artists. You know, we knew that first of all, we just love films. We truly love films. We love all kinds of films, all styles. And, you know, we also realize what a powerful art form it is, actually. Like, you know, for people to, like, how much it consciously or unconsciously shapes the way you view the world and the way you view yourself, the way you view other people. So what we're interested in as artists is, you know, is trying to discover the truth of what's around us, you know, and what's going on. And it's less about distributing information and much more about conveying what it means to be a human being, you know. And so documentary happens to be the way that we approach that. There's a lot of different ways to approach that through many different art forms. You know, that's the beauty of art. It's just so huge and explores all aspects of human beings, and in a very, you know, inclusive way. So, you know, I would say that the thing is that because documentary a lot of times, you know, came out of sometimes reportage, I guess, you know, some people think of it in a very narrow way. And we don't think of it like that. We think of documentaries as being as equally emotionally moving as any book, any narrative film. And plus, these are real people, you know? So it's like, you know, we're not writing those lines, you know? Like we're listening to what's happening and seeing what's happening and interpreting what's happening, you know, through our art. But, you know, how people sort of use it in the world is kind of, we'll see what happens. It depends who's using it, right? So, yeah.
You talked about it being emotional, and I agree. It is, and each time I've seen it, it sneaks up on me, and the tears are coming, and it's because
about being sneaky. That's interesting. We've heard that a couple of times where, you know, sorry to cut you off, but
no, please.
It definitely sneaks on people. People think they think they've got it figured out in the beginning, and then you are taken in a different direction and a different journey. So thank you for saying that, because
it means so much to us when we hear that people cry during the movie. It's really does. because we also cry during the movie, you know, and they do, you know, it's, and there's joy too. So anyway, but please continue. We never get tired of hearing about people.
And I think the level of my emotional response is because of, I think, your skilled filmmaking. And so I think I have a couple questions about that. And the first one, you talked about the time that you spent with them. And the movie, one of the reasons why I think it's so powerful is it deals with the passage of time and how people experience time. And that's through rituals and events like graduations, galas, the drum showcases, going to cemeteries to memorialize people that we've missed. So could you talk about how long you spent filming this, and the relationships in the filming process, like how you chose these events to be at?
Sure. Marlon, you want me to go first? Or?
Yes.
Okay. So as we said, the film had been being thought about for quite a while. And so there was some preliminary like filming that happened almost around other projects in Louisville that had been happening. Because I've actually been filming in Louisville for many years on lots of different music stories, by the way. So it's like, so there was sort of, it was on the radar, but the principal photography started in 2016 with The Fall, okay, meaning fall of 2016. And that's when, we decided after the knowledge that the way into the story was going to be Mr. White's last year, because you see an organization like the Drum Corps and you're like, there's a lot of stories in there, but which one are we doing roughly, in an exploratory sense, like, and that was somehow the way in, like, he's a giant in the community, we need to, so that basically the principal filming happened for the course of that whole academic year, like fall to fall, it was a very small crew. Like sometimes it was just Marlon and camera, Marlon and sound. Sometimes it was Marlon, me, camera and sound. That was the biggest crew. It was like, four. And that's part of it, is like, we didn't want to be a big film crew. We never wanted it to be like they're doing it for us. It was always like we were there for them, like we were just there to, and Mr. White will say this, he's like, they just, faded into the background, it was verite style. At the same time, we were very intentional about the verite style. And Marlon, you can talk more about, like, I mean, there's so much that went into our filming choices and, the drone idea. And all I will say is that we went into this with a very ambitious, artistic, feeling that we wanted to really do all these things that we had always wanted to do. And it was beautiful to be able to work with Mr. White and Albert, because they're both artists too. So they were just like so into it,
Yeah.
And then Juan, I mean, our DP, Juan, I mean, we had two DPs, but like, these are all artists who are just doing their art. And so that all came together so beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, they did have a hard schedule too as an organization, and so we would see that and kind of anticipate things that might be interesting to film over the course of that year, and then on the fringes, we allowed ourselves enough time to be able to see what else we might be able to get out of that. And I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think some of the most important traits to have as a documentary filmmaker, as a storyteller, just to be patient and to be observant and to listen. And if you have those three qualities, I think you're off to a good start. And artistically, I'd like to think that both Anne and I possess those to a great degree. And that's kind of what comes across on the screen.
I think part of it is because we have been making documentaries for so long that like we have gotten to the, the point where we want to, approach everything fresh. It really is like that, like we don't go in going like, we need this, and that. We never do that now, it's just like and also, like Marlon said, the Drum Corps itself had a structure. Like they had performances every month. So if you build like your visit around like an event, but then you kind of like leave days on either side to just sort of go around in the car or like go visit mom or whatever it is, that's kind of how we structured the filming days. And then, yeah.
Yeah, one reason I'm asking is I could see a very different movie where you would focus on one event or one drum showcase, and that could take up the whole event. So you made the choice to spend this time, and that's, I guess you say, coming out of the fact that Mr. White was stepping down. So you want to tell that story, and that sort of helped shape the project.
Well, and we also very intentionally did not want to do a sort of build up to the competition kind of film. We knew that from the get-go. We were like, we're not doing that film because that's not what their focus is. Their focus is daily skills, daily life, you know, and you talked about like how art shapes people's lives. That's how, you know, when music is amazing that way because you have to practice it every day, you know. When you practice something, it changes your brain and your body, you know.
Yeah, you see that, and from watching the movie more than once, you definitely see that, and I would love to actually watch more of that footage where someone is teaching someone how to play a part or do a thing or clap or not hit a beat or hit a beat.
Sure.
And you start to see the building of an awareness, the building of a community through that musical training. So that was a question about sort of the filming side. What about sort of the editing and composition side? You talked about the drone shot, so it sort of moves between sequences with people, and then there's sort of sequences that show long shots of the city or the river. And that seems to be an important part of how you tell the story over time. So if you could talk about that sort of decision to sort of how you tell the story, not so much how you film it, but how you edit it into this final piece.
Yeah, well, I think just again, artistically, I think that this sense of passage of time and seasons was really important. And one great way to do that is with some of the shots that you saw that's in the film with the drones. And Louisville has a great seasonal change that happens from winter to fall to spring to summer. So capturing all that we thought was very essential visually. And the editing, that's a whole other... Both Ann and I have editing backgrounds, and so you know, there were essentially 3 editors. Jeff, shout out to Jeff, in the editing suite, and so we could really have this shorthand when it came to building out scenes and trying different things, and we'd each get in the driver's seat at one point, which was just a testament to how.
Huge shout out to Jeff for dealing with 2 directors who are both also editors.
Yeah. So that takes a lot of.
We care deeply about the edit.
Yeah. And so it really is. It's, you know, we talked about this, Anne, and you know how the movie is shaped is in 3 forms. You know, it's shaped when you are preparing for the film, then it's reshaped when you're shooting it, and then it's reshaped again in post-production and the edit. And you have to give yourself as an artist enough space to allow for the story to come to you rather than forcing it to be something that it can't. I think, you know, I would have made a slightly different film if I had done it on my own, I think. Anne would have, but us collaborating together at every stage made for the best version of what you see on screen.
Yeah, we always say that because of the 2 of us that we felt like we saw more, you know, and that we were able to have a more, like a bigger vision, you know, and I guess, I mean, just speaking specifically about the drone shots, I mean, we both love and talked a lot about the film Wings of Desire, you know, that is a film so existential, you know what I mean? And also about the child, and it's so different from our film, but like it's like, that's the thing about film, is that you can be inspired by films like that. And what we felt was that, like, there are angels in this film. There are lots of angels in this film. And that was really the inspiration for the drone shots, from a sort of, you know, heart level. You know, Zambia is no longer with us. That's how I thought of the drone visits. It also was very important to get a sense of the place of Louisville you know, the legacy of the river, the legacy, like Louisville would not exist if it was not for the river. That's how it started, you know. So all of these ways, you know, we knew, for instance, that we didn't want to have anybody talking about the history directly, but to tell the history through art. Like that's why Ed Hamilton's, you know, sculpture is in the movie. Also, look at Ed Hamilton, what an amazing artist, you know. So like all the, like, thinking about monuments, it's just, there's such a rich tapestry of art, and it can communicate so much at so many levels. So so we brought a lot of those thoughts into the edit.
Yeah, and again, to our point we said earlier, is that both Ann and I really wanted to make sure that the aesthetics of the film were just as important as any information we were putting out there. Maybe that's the sneaky part, Andy, that you refer to, and it just is something that is as important to us as any type of information that you can put out there for the viewer.
Yeah, I guess my counter to that would be it's not it's the same thing. The
Sure.
aesthetics and it's information as well, and it's sort of teaching me as a viewer how to understand the rest of the you know, the part with the people.
Sure.
and you're right, like it's the place and the people together that come together, and I think, and you mentioned Ed Hamilton sculptures, and there's Lincoln Memorial in the river, and since this is a St. Louis International Film Festival, there's a mention of St. Louis there through the memorial that where Lincoln talks about seeing the enslaved people being put down the river.
Down the river, yeah.
Down to St. Louis. And so this is sort of a question that made me really think about the ways that this movie is very specific about one organization and a part of a town. But then it also has these connections, obviously, historically, geographically. So I don't really have a question right here, but that got me really thinking about how I'm not in St. Louis right now, but the archive is in St. Louis and the connections that it has. And so I wonder if you could sort of think about or talk about the way that this film has these wider connections. Obviously, it's through the arts and through the history that
Sure. I mean, these are about legacies. So when we talk about the legacy of Mr. White and the drum corps, that's one legacy. Also, there's the legacy of this country, you know, that's how I thought of it, was like, you know, there's the legacy of racism, there's the legacy of economic discrimination. These all play out in the daily lives of people. So it's like interweaving these legacies is what is the broader picture, why it relates to many places and many people. You know, the themes that we're talking about are quite non-specific, but because we get to know actual people actually living their lives, we can relate, we can form a connection with the people on screen. And that's where amazing things can happen, when we get to know each other, you know.
Sure, and also just the proximity of the state of Kentucky as well. It's not really South, it's not really, it's Midwest, it's South, it's a little bit of everything, and that really is indicative of the country, you know. It's where Mitch McConnell and Muhammad Ali are from. So you have that, you know, dichotomy that is emblematic of the country, especially now. And in telling these stories of the people in this community, you realize that, and Mr. White says it, that they just want the same thing that everyone else does. Their aspirations, their fears, their desires, are all part of the big American story, and that we're all seeking. So, yeah.
Well, that was one of the many powerful moments in the film.
Sure.
For me. You know, as we sort of wrap up this discussion, we talked a lot about time and what the film, how the film documents that. It's been a year now, I think, since the movie sort of
Yes.
more or less premiered at Doc NYC.
Sure.
And so I will say a lot of the things in the movie that maybe seemed like everyday events, people hugging at graduation, people going to I don't know if it was a city fair or not, the drum showcases where people were together. now seem like the most important thing possible. Like maybe it was an everyday event, but now it just seems so dramatic and important and possible. So thank you for recording that. So I guess one thing, this is sort of a question about both how the film might have changed in your all's mind since it's been screening, not just during the current political moment, but also just anyway, when a movie gets released, it changes over time, right? Or the experience, it changes over time. And then the other question is how, and maybe this is something you can't speak about right now, but how the River City Drum Corps has been dealing. I mean, I'm curious to know how they are handling and maintaining.
Me, Marlon?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, what was the first question again?
You know,
let me talk about
yeah.
the Drum Corps because we're in we basically, you know, talk with Albert and Mr. White almost every week, if not more, because we've been distributing the film over the course of this year. And we were lucky enough, we were so fortunate, you know, speaking of life before pandemic, to be able to have a live festival event in New York almost a year ago, and then in Miami. And we were able to do that with Mr. White, Albert, Imani, Jalen, and their moms, and Brandy, Albert's sister. So we were able to have a celebration. We were also able to do a private preview in Louisville with like the 7 seniors. So we were fortunate. It really helped sustain us through this time of pandemic, you know, and political uprising, to have had these moments together, not just the making of the film, but the celebration of the finishing of the film. And then quite quickly after 2 festivals, COVID hit, everything shut down, and we just kept in very close touch throughout, because we felt that, I mean, as I said, we have children who are home during the pandemic. You know, that's a momentous thing that has happened in the education system in this country. I cannot overstate it. It's like, it's just, you know, it has so many impacts. And we felt like the film, you know, may be beneficial to people during this time. And so we didn't want to stop. We didn't want to wait and not keep trying to get it out there. So we continued that work. We taught all of us how to use Zoom, you know, including Mr. White, you know, and very early on, and we were just like, we're just going to keep going. I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but we're going to do this. And they were very totally on board with it. And it gave them a lot of hope, you know, and then, you know, then Louisville became the center of, you know, the national, the latest wave of Black Lives Matter with Breonna Taylor. And so there was just like, you know, it is a very intense period. And in the midst of it all, each person from the drum corps that we're communicating with, you know, is kind of dealing in different ways. Albert is running the drum corps virtually. They're doing virtual drum corps. Mr. White is out taking photographs of all of the upright, you know, he's not working with drum corps anymore. So he's been able to pursue his photography again, and he's taking photos, you know, of what's happening. Jalen, who is now a senior in college, is like a broadcast journalism major. He's there, you know, reporting on everything that's happening. So everybody, all sorts of things are happening with the people in the movie. And that's, I guess, the sort of short answer, maybe long, short answer. Yeah.
But also to add to that, I think that the movie hasn't changed, obviously, but I think what's happened is that people who might not have normally paid close attention because of everything that's going on, this is resonating in a way that it wouldn't have. And that's kind of a blessing in disguise, in a sense. Some of the things that we've been saying have been said, I've been saying for generations, but it's just now clicking in the minds and the hearts of a lot of people. So how they experienced it has changed and evolved.
Well, that's my set of questions, and so if there's not anything else you all would like to conclude with.
Well, we want to talk about Henry Hampton film series. We're so excited. We want to thank the festival and the archive for choosing the film for the Henry Hampton film series, because
such an honor.
Documentary filmmakers, I mean, that's so meaningful. My life was completely affected by Eyes on the Prize. I mean, I remember watching that in the 80s, you know. I've been reflecting on, like, you know, the huge effect of PBS on my life as a, you know, talking about the impact of media. I mean, it cannot be overstated, you know. It's so important in how it shapes how you view the world and how you view yourself. Yeah. So it's a great honor, I mean, to be part of that film series.
Well, thank you for saying that. And it's an honor personally, professionally, for me to work with this collection. And one of the advantages is we try to bear witness to the collection, to bear witness to the programs that they made with Blackside, that he made with Blackside and his co-producers. And I think your film is really a fantastic way of maintaining the legacy, the work that they did. So thank you for making the movie and for sharing it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.